Yep.
Hello guys, I'm Marcelo, and today I'm going to talk to you guys about trans and the trans community and violence that trans individuals experience. So first and foremost, I want to speak to you guys about an individual, and her name is Sasha Wall. Sasha Wall was a black trans woman who was shot to death in her still running car in South Carolina. Although it's not confirmed, it is believed that her murder was a hate crime. The problem with the investigation was that Sasha was misgendered and dead named by law enforcement and coverage by the media. So obviously this investigation was delayed because of that. So just some words to define transgender or trans, as I will be using, denotes or relates to a person whose sense of personal identity and gender does not correspond with their birth sex. Also, dead naming, that occurs when someone intentionally or not refers to a person who's transgender by the name they used before they transition. So my claim today is that violence within the transgender community exists due to a lack of policy. And I will be supporting my claim today with three supporting claims. The first of which is that transgender death rates are abnormally high due to lack of protective policies. Second is that transgender individuals face higher rates of sexual assault due to lack of protective policies. And third, that police policies currently in place hinder the investigation of crimes. So to my first supporting claim, that transgender death rates are abnormally high due to lack of protective policies. The Human Rights Campaign states that 2018 has already seen at least 21 deaths of the trans community that have been fatally shot or killed by other violent means. And that is kind of alarming because in 2007 there was a total of 28 murders. So at that rate, there might be more than last year. As well as that some of these cases involve clear anti-trans bias, and that in other cases, the victim's transgender status may have contributed to putting them in risk, such as homelessness. And the thing about that is that many trans individuals are not comfortable seeking help, and that's because according to Safe Alliance, 46% of respondents in the National Trans Discrimination Survey reported being uncomfortable seeking police assistance. Onto my second supporting claim, that transgender individuals face higher rates of sexual assault due to lack of protective policies. According to the Human Rights Campaign, the 2015 U.S. Transgender Survey found that 47% of trans people are sexually assaulted at some point in their lifetime, and that is after they have transitioned. Additionally, 17% of respondents who stayed at one or more homeless shelters in the past year were sexually assaulted at the shelter because they were trans. And that's unfortunate because in cases where they can't find jobs or don't have sufficient resources to live on their own, that can become unfortunate for them. And according to Safe Alliance, trans women of color have learned to fear random hate crimes, and a lot of them sometimes are not believed by law enforcement when they do go for help, as well as a lot of them are arrested for survival tactics or activities which may be illegal. And unfortunately, to make matters worse, if a transgender person is arrested, they face being housed by the gender identity in police custody that is not the one they identify with, which puts them at a higher risk of harassment or sexual assault. And to my final supporting claim, that police policies currently in place hinder the investigation of crimes. According to the National Public Radio, when police are investigating murders of trans people, and they are going around saying a name that nobody knows or a pronoun that they do not familiarize that person with, it can be harder to further the investigation, and of course it impacts it. And as well as many people claim that the officers are simply doing their job by identifying the deceased with the name that is on their ID. But as the Dallas Police Department reports, investigations go smoother and easier when they reach out to the community and use a name that people know. So because of this, I believe that with policies in place, trans individuals can be better helped and protected. And I also believe that with policies in place, Sasha Wall might still be alive, and if not, her killer might have been dead already. Thank you.
You can sit down. I'm going to give you comments, but I hate it when people just stand there because it's like then you're a target. And we're just working together, so hang on just a second, though. All right, Marcelo, the propositions identified pretty clearly at the beginning of the speech. You are, in essence, making a cause-effect claim that the violence is a result of a lack of policies. So we're going to need a little bit more information that connects it to the lack of policies. I think you have a good description of some of the problems that are faced by the trans community, and definitely a description of some of the dangers that are going on there. The linking of it to the policies, though, is the thing that I think is a little bit problematic, and you need some more information on. There's a solid preview of what the supporting structure is going to be, so it's going to be easy for us to follow. And during the presentation, I thought you did a good job indicating where we were at every given point in the speech, doing the signposting like we talked about doing, so I think that's great. The first point is mostly about the risks that this population faces, that there's a high level of risk there. I think you document some cases there. You've got some factual data about the number of deaths in the community. You start with the one example that's pretty dramatic. The linking of it to any official policy or the lack of policies to address this, though, that's where I think it's a little problematic. And in fact, you have a place later on where it suggests that some of the difficulties or the exposures or the risks are a result of engaging in policies that, like you describe them as survival tactics. My guess is that the survival tactics, not only are they a risk for potential arrest by police officers, they're probably a risk for some of the vulnerabilities too, that kind of thing. And so you may have a double-edged sword with that particular argument. I thought that you cited the Safe Alliance regularly, NPR, the Human Rights Campaign. Some of the statistics that are being presented are very dramatic. I do think you might want to give us a little bit more context on the research. The evidence that suggests 47% of people who have transitioned have been sexually assaulted after they transitioned. That's a pretty high number. Again, this is one of those places where context may mitigate the way we perceive this, but relating it to official policies or any kind of policy, lack of policy, for instance, I think is problematic. The difficulty that you cite on the third point with police policies, I don't know if that's like you said, sometimes the police don't know. They only have the name that's on the driver's license of the victim in that particular situation. I think the Dallas police are suggesting that they are interested in solving crimes, and they want to do everything that's possible to do that. So the question is, what policy would change this? What would make it more effective? How could some official police procedure have altered the way these things work? I think that's where you need a little bit more information. That these tragedies occur, that it may in fact be closely related to their transsexual identity. That I think is pretty well established, but in essence that's a competing causality, and your causality is that it's a lack of policies as opposed to the transitioning that they're doing. So you need to have a little bit more information on that. I thought the speech was nicely put together, is easy to follow, and presented very well as also. All right, thank you.